So Ken, I'm glad you dropped by. I wanted, it would be great if I could talk about my 10 favorite jazz records. Here's the thing, I'm still a relative jazz newcomer, and I don't have the level of expertise or understanding to talk about, the music in depth. I'm one of those people where everything I know is, I've read a couple of books, the Horace Parlin's book, and I read the really great Kansas City Lightning. Which was supposed to have been the first of several volumes in the biography of Charlie Parker, but I don't think it's Stanley Crouch, who was a really good writer. I don't think Stanley Crouch is going to write any more additions to it, which is too bad, because I recommend that really highly. So, but anyway, I digress. I don't have a terrific depth of understanding of the form yet, so basically what it's going to come down to is my favorite jazz records, just the ones I like the most, or the ones with the greatest sentimental value. This, Monk's Music, this was the first jazz record I ever bought. And it's an OJC reissue, and it sounds just fine, I think. And what can you say, off minor. At that point, once I found that, I began looking through the Monk catalog for other albums that had different versions of off minor on it, like Live at Town Hall and stuff like that. But everything on this album is really great, and it's really exemplary of his playing style and his composing style. It's playful, it's fun, it moves forward with a really neat swagger. I just love that music, so that's way cool. So that's, I don't know if it's my favorite of the 10, but it's right up there. And actually, on the same day, I bought Monk's Music and I bought Sonny Rollins' Way Out West, which is also a great record. But then I wondered, that's not my favorite Sonny album. Actually, this, Sonny Meets Hawk, is my favorite Sonny album. And mostly because the pianist on here was the great late Paul Bley. Paul Bley passed away 3 years ago. But he was my neighbor. He lived in Cherry Valley, New York. Oh. And I got to know him a little bit. And he was a big guy. He was actually a physically big guy. Oh. And he could be gruff, and he could also be very, very nice and very warm. And I saw more of the warm side than the gruff side. Anyway, Sonny Meets Hawk. It's, you get the best of Sonny, you get the best of the Hawk, you get the best of Coleman Hawkins here, but Paul Bley's solo in All the Things You Are, and especially the spaces that he leaves, the notes he leaves unplayed, that's almost becoming a cliche, but in this case it's true, the notes he leaves unplayed are just amazing. Paul Bley was a magician. And I asked him about the sessions, and I said, so was it cool? Was everybody friendly? And he said, no, it was really tense, so I guess we'll have to leave it at that. That's also among my favorites. So next, this is an album that Jonathan Halpern turned me on to, Jonathan Halpern of Tone Imports. The Quest, and here it's credited to Mal Waldron. You can also find copies of this that are credited to Eric Dolphy, who plays reeds on this album. It's also an OJC pressing. Oh, I should mention that my pressing of Sonny Meets Hawk is one that Classic Records did. Classic Records did a handful of jazz records, and they did them really well. They did great work. Okay. So here's another OJC pressing. You can find it. It's not expensive. If you don't cry a little when you hear Warm Canto, then there might be something wrong with you. I don't know. It's really lovely. It's, we all have vocal numbers that can make us cry. Instrumental numbers that can make us cry, I think, are rarer. The last movement of Mahler's Third usually does it for me, unless it's played really badly. And Warm Canto is one of those. I always wind up saying, it sounds French. I don't know why it sounds French. It has those sort of pastel harmonies in it, primary colors. Everything's kind of pastel, but it's just lovely. It's a lovely record. Mal Waldron, of course, was the accompanist for Billie Holiday for a good portion of her career. So this is just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful record. Okie dokie. So here we are in turntable land. I used two turntables. They're both vintage. Years ago, I used a Linn LP12 for a long time. It's a great turntable. And just to back up for a second, in audio, audio components or audio systems are really like people. No one does everything. It's like no human can really say they're good at everything, and no audio component or system, if they were sentient, would say I can do everything. There are a couple of products that are really good all-arounders that do a lot, like the EMT TSD15 cartridge. That's one of those phono cartridges that I think could please just about anybody, and it's not too horribly expensive. And it's easy to use, easy to set up. After years of living with LP12s, I kind of moved toward vintage idler drive turntables. And both the Thorens TD124 and the Garrard 301 are idler drive turntables. The Garrard has a larger, higher torque motor than the Thorens does. The Thorens has a somewhat lower torque motor, and it also puts an intermediary, it's also belt drive. The motor drives a pulley via belt, and the pulley drives the idler mechanism. So there's an intermediary mechanism in there, presumably to reduce rumble, to reduce motor noise breakthrough into the platter. There are a couple of mechanisms for that. There's also this neat clutch mechanism. The platter itself, which is made out of iron, the record is isolated from the platter by this aluminum shell subplatter, which I believe is made by spinning. Spinning is a manufacturing process that is really a lost art. Cymbals are made that way, where you put a lump of metal on something, and then a guy uses a wooden stick with a special kind of pointer. He'll have a variety of shapes to kind of draw it out. It's a little bit like pottery when you see them do it. Years ago I worked for a company called Edison Price that made lighting, and a lot of the lighting fixtures, they made parabolic reflectors, and they were made by spinning. And the guys who did the spinning were mostly these old guys who had been doing it for a long time. And you see almost all of them had a fingertip missing here or there, really cut up hands and stuff. But anyhow, the great thing about that is you've got this clutch mechanism where if you want to leave the motor going and you want to change records, you just hit your clutch, you get that little scraping noise, that's the platter still turning underneath the shell. Lift the record, flip it over, put the clutch back on, boom, bomb's your uncle. And it's a great industrial design. I love it aesthetically. I like the way it sounds a lot. I have a slight preference for the sound of the Garrard 301. Maybe because of the higher torque motor, maybe for that reason it has, to my ears, a greater sense of drive. But they're both real good.
Why did you want to have two turntables?
That's a really good question. What I had in mind at one point was to have one setup where it would always be stereo and another setup where it would always be mono. That just hasn't worked out, just for logistical reasons, and at the moment I lack a preamp that has capabilities to switch between two phono inputs. I used to have a Shindo Masetto, which had two phono inputs, and you could easily switch between them. I have the Montbrisson now, which sounds a little, I hate to say better. It's a different sound, and it's really to my liking, but it doesn't have that switching capability. Oh well. But anyways, that's, maybe someday I'll find some way of switching between them easily. So in the cases of both these turntables, they're on plinths, they're on or in plinths, depending on how you look at it, that I made from stacked pieces of plywood. And in the case of the Garrard 301, and both these things for like a really shamefully long time just sat unfinished. Just you come to my house and you see the edges of all these pieces of plywood, and it kind of looked like hell. So I finally decided, yeah, I got to make them look a little bit better, and maybe also, by sealing them, make the wood a little more stable. So I finished the Garrard with a Cocobolo veneer, and that was my first and last, my only veneering job. Don't look too close because you're going to see a couple of bits and bobs that I didn't do a particularly good job on. But it's serviceable, and the Cocobolo is attractive. And there you go. This one, I just painted. After doing one plinth in wood veneer, I thought, well, the hell with that. That was a lot of work, and I wasn't very good at it. So that's just multiple coats of spray. It's like an alkyd enamel or something like that, off the shelf kind of thing, with a lot of sanding, a lot of wet sanding between the coats, just to give it a little bit of a smooth finish. That's all that is. And I chose the most 60s-ish color that I could find, something you used to be able to find cars in and can't anymore.
It's pretty wild.
It's wild, yeah. It looks. I've been told my color judgment isn't so hot, but I haven't let it stop. I haven't let it slow me down yet.
It's like hipster swinging green Son of Shindo.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Should have like little, flower appliques on it.
Don't go too far now.
Yeah, that would be going too far.